Bobby, I want you to meet my colleague, Dr. Hamilton.
And I'd like you to get the out of here.
Since almost the dawn of cinema, movie sequels have faced accusations of creative bankruptcy, with relatively few mustering the often singular appeal of whatever it was that justified them.
By definition alone, they're inferior films.
The precedent was set with the first ever made, Birth of a Nation, Continuation, The Fall of a Nation, which disappointed its core audience with a shocking lack of racism.
I just wish you could all see the Earth the way that I see it.
Over a century later, faithful moviegoers are still being hoodwinked, with even the most lucrative franchises routinely laying giant dog eggs on the freshly cut lawn of popular culture.
They fly now! They fly now! They fly now!
But regardless of how pungent they are, some of these belly-up follow-ups have an unintended appeal, and that's what I'm interested in, because this video's about entertainingly bad sequels to popular genre B-movies.
You think that alligator might have a huge bomb inside it. Will this stuff help explode it?
The rules are in that description. The need to be entertaining eliminates stuff like The Crow 4, which is an insult to obscenities. The need for the original to be popular does for Cybertracker 2, because nobody cared about Cybertracker 1, while the B-movie's caveat excludes the likes of Jaws 3D, because the original Jaws wasn't a B-movie.
That makes a lot of sense.
They're the rules, so let's get started.
All right, you guys, come on. No cheap shots, move it around.
When Andy Sedaris released Hard Ticket to Hawaii in 1987, the world wasn't yet ready for its uncompromising blend of action, glamour, and exploding sex dolls. But when it hit VHS 2 years later, it cleaned up, relatively speaking, recouping its $1 million budget many times over and proving Sedaris was right to have gone ahead and made sequel Picasso Trigger. Technically, the American writer, director, and producer may have launched his Lethal Ladies universe with Stacy, Seven, or Malibu Express, depending on how argumentative you are. But Hard Ticket to Hawaii formalized the formula, and Picasso Trigger brings back its key characters and tropes, particularly the one that makes everything blow up. It doesn't quite reach Hard Ticket's heights, but it does have everything you'd want and expect from a Sedaris movie, including multiple exploding toys, exotic vehicles, swimsuits, hot tubs, jet skis, and highly improbable undercover agents.
And now for a little banjo music. Okay, you turkeys, freeze!
God damn. You know, I've been waiting over 70 years for some jackass to get the sense to come dig me up. Thank you, boy.
House, writer-director Steve Miner's 1985 genre classic, was initially envisioned as a segment for an anthology film planned by Miner and friends Shane Black and Ethan Wiley. But when he developed it into a feature, Wiley's intended contribution, the story of a crystal skull able to bestow immortality, became sequel House 2, the second story. And I guess that explains why the two movies have nothing in common beyond featuring a Cheers star and beginning with the main character moving into a new home.
Woman lived here before you was nuts. Biggest bitch under the sun. Just a senile old hag, really.
She was my aunt.
Heart of gold, though. Just a saint, really.
That said, the original did have an off-kilter tone that this one expands upon, which is a polite way of saying it's an extraordinary mess of unrelated and often quite insane ideas. Immortal old-timey prospector? Fine. Interdimensional Aztec sacrifice? I guess. A subplot about a wannabe pop star? Not a great fit with the Aztecs. An electrician who's also a supernatural adventurer? Okay. Plus zombie horses, a magical worm dog, Bill Mayer, and dinosaurs. I have no idea why there are dinosaurs in this movie, but I am in favour. Basically, Wiley seems to have thrown everything he could think of at the screen, and most of it appears to have stuck.
Looks like you got some kind of alternate universe in there or something.
Thanks.
The screenplay was written in just 12 days, though I believe LSD makes time pass more slowly. But that doesn't explain the sloppy production, which is festooned with crew reflections, rogue puppeteer arms, and in the 4x3 version, dolly tracks and boom mics. but somehow it's all in keeping with the spirit of things, which is loose and fun and doesn't require us to make sense of anything.
You just gotta teach him who's boss. You know, sort of give him a spanking. Must be foreign made.
This type of bullet killed your sister.
They're silver.
Yes. You know what that means?
No, what?
This type of bullet, Mr. White, means your sister is a werewolf.
In 1981, Joe Dante's revisionist werewolf movie The Howling proved a surprise hit, raking in around $20 million in the US alone. Numbers like that make sequels inevitable, and there were many, all of them terrible.
The devil was a werewolf. Wow, that's incredible.
The plot follows Ben White, the brother of the first movie's reporter protagonist Karen, as he investigates her death with the aid of a former colleague and werewolf expert Stefan Krosko, who leads them to werewolf queen Sturba and her pack of underlings.
Oh, you shouldn't have done that. You made Deacon mad, and he gets real nasty when he's mad.
The key players all appear to have had different ideas about what kind of movie they were making. Director Felipe Mora clearly couldn't decide whether it should be an art film or a comedy, so he went for both. Apparently Christopher Lee was the only one under the impression it was meant to be a horror movie, although he may just have been stuck on factory settings.
Where do we have to go to find Sturba?
To Transylvania.
Another reason for the schizophrenic tone might be the number of cooks who were in the kitchen. Finding the screenplay impossible to take seriously, Mora shot and cut the movie as a parody, only for the producers to step in and re-edit it back to a horror. That absolves the director of some of the blame, but he also made some indefensibly bizarre choices, like repeating Sybil Danning's one topless moment 17 times during the end credits, and opening on an ineptly cropped Christopher Lee reading awkwardly from the Book of Revelation.
Behold, I am the great mother of harlots. And I saw her sit upon a hairy beast, and she held forth a golden chalice full of the filthiness of her fornications.
I've talked about Ninja 3 The Domination before and even made a documentary on it, but I have to bring it up again here because director Sam Furstenberg's film about an aerobics instructing telephone engineer possessed by a demonic ninja assassin is about as much fun as you can have getting your cannon on.
No kidding.
First in the trilogy, Franco Nero starring Enter the Ninja might have done more to establish canon films than any other movie, but it's not my bag, unlike the sequel, Revenge of the Ninja, which benefits from original villain Sho Kosugi being promoted to protagonist. But it's Ninja 3 that attracts the most attention nowadays thanks to a confused combination of themes, including dance, romance, and of course possession by supernatural ninja.
Dr. Bowen, the psychiatrist you saw, says there's nothing out of the ordinary, aside from your exceptional extrasensory perception and your preoccupation with Japanese culture.
Kosugi returns again, albeit in a smaller role, as a ninja master sent to purge the evil ninja's spirit.
Only a ninja can destroy a ninja.
And he's great, as is the plentiful action, the barking mad but undeniably zippy narrative, and most surprisingly the chemistry between Jordan Bennett as hairy love interest Billy Secord and Lucinda Dickey as scary surrogate Christy Ryder, who does a marvellous job keeping a straight face no matter what she's expected to say.
You fool! You cannot stop me! I am a ninja! No one, nothing can stop me!
I'm guessing the next one's more controversial, but I'm prepared to die on this hill.
You want to buy bushwood from me? That's right, that's right. Well, let me ask you this. Do I own it?
With 1980s Caddyshack, writer-director Harold Ramis brought together some of the most exciting and inebriated comedy talent in America and fashioned a Slobs v. Snobs classic, bursting with boo-hiss villains, underdog heroes, and timeless one-liners.
Oh, somebody's stuffing a duck.
Caddyshack 2 tries to do the same thing, exactly the same thing, and according to popular opinion it fails miserably. But while it's true the plot's identical and stars like Jackie Mason, Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase clearly don't want to be there, they are there, and at least one of them's hilarious.
Good old Dad. No flies on him. Very few on Mom, as I recall. Well, they're gone now. They passed away? No, Palm Beach. Wait a minute. I'm sorry, I think they are dead.
Watching his acerbic, iconoclastic Ty Webb interacting with the privileged elite for whom he has nothing but contempt will always be funny, so I guess this is an entertaining bad movie despite the fact it's rubbish rather than because it's rubbish, which is often the way with the best worst comedies.
Have you ever seen a crisp $50 bill?
American, I want to negotiate. Do you hear me, American?
Loud and clear.
In 1986, Cannon gave us The Delta Force, starring Chuck Norris as Major Scott McCoy, a retired and rebellious Special Forces commander who's called back to duty to tackle a terrorist hijacking. For the sequel, Delta Force 2, The Colombian Connection, which is set in the fictional nation of San Carlos and has nothing to do with Colombia, McCoy's tasked with bringing in Billy Drago's drug lord Ramon Cota.
Come on, let me go. Let me go. Okay.
Unfortunately, the first arrest doesn't stick, and with the mad dog drug lord free and hell-bent on revenge against Chuck and his partner Bobby, and with Bobby being all loved up with his pregnant wife,
I got the most beautiful wife in the world.
we can safely say it will only be a matter of time until... wow, less than a minute. Really? This cues things up nicely for the movie's second half, which is a mildly racist, overtly sexist, and wildly jingoistic free-for-all, in which a Superhawk general invades San Carlos in his helicopter gunship and barrels around the country, blowing up anything he doesn't like the look of.
I order you to leave the Carlos airspace at once. Why don't you shut the f*** up?
Meanwhile, McCoy's on his own profoundly illegal mission with the movie's second of two female characters, who, like the first, is only there so Cota can do horrible things to her that will make us hate him.
Ramon killed her husband, murdered her sick baby, then used the baby's body to smuggle cocaine, and then he raped her. Probably be a good idea not to bring it up when you meet. She might be a little sensitive.
After Delta Force 2, Chuck made a final disappointing thriller with the floundering Cannon, before embarking on TV show Walker, Texas Ranger and an accompanying series of increasingly awful family movies. That means Delta Force 2 is the last of his classic films, when the flying kicks really flew, the stunt doubles got more screen time than the women, and the dialogue was absolutely terrible.
Didn't you say he wasn't going to fight?
I didn't fight. I gave a motivational seminar.
Are you McLeod?
Yes, I am.
Great. I always wanted to meet the guy that turned the world to shit.
When it was released in 1986, Russell Mulcahy's Highlander failed to set the US box office alight, grossing less than $13 million on a $19 million budget, which should probably exclude it as a B-movie actually. But it found more appreciative audiences elsewhere, proving a big hit in Europe in particular.
You talk funny, Nash. Where are you from?
Lots of different places.
Apparently that was enough to encourage producer William Panzer to revisit the story of a race of immortal warriors who've battled their way through history in the hope of being the last one standing.
There can be only one.
There were numerous conceptual and narrative problems that needed overcoming though, and one of the reasons Highlander 2 The Quickening is so terrible is that nobody really bothered.
How revolting!
Our hero, Christopher Lambert's Connor McLeod, ended the first movie as a mortal, but Panzer insisted he be immortal again, so the sequel makes him a rebel space alien banished to Earth, then sends more space aliens for him to kill, which gives him back his space alien immortality.
Okay, now let me just see if I can get this straight. You're mortal there, but you're immortal here until you kill all the guys from there who have come here, and then you're mortal here. Unless you go back there, or some more guys from there come here, in which case you become immortal here again.
Something like that.
But of course McLeod had already aged and Panzer wanted him young again, so without any explanation the return of his immortality also takes about 40 years off the clock. More baffling is the reappearance of Sean Connery's mentor figure Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez, which was again mandated by Panzer despite the character being dead for half a millennium. There are numerous ways you could explain a space alien returning to life, but again it seems nobody could be bothered because there isn't an explanation. He just comes back to life.
Rather glad the magic works.
That's the kind of movie Highlander 2 The Quickening is, but there's also Highlander 2 The Renegade version, and although it's better edited and a little less schlocky, I'm not sure it's much of an improvement.
Hit it, dude!
Many of these problems result from the Argentinian shoot being a complete disaster, with the local crew branded amateurish drunks, economic mayhem wreaking havoc on the budget, and the Bond company ultimately stepping in to take control of production. As a result, returning director Russell Mulcahy felt his vision wasn't realised, and in 1995 he recut the movie to better reflect it, and this so-called Renegade version is the only one now readily available.
In the end, there can be only one.
The biggest change lies in the reconfiguration of the Immortals' backstory, which rather than space aliens makes them ancient Earthlings who can travel through time. I don't know which is more stupid. To be fair, no formal mythology could ever explain the demented rules of the Highlander universe, and while the space aliens idea was universally mocked, it doesn't create as many problems as the time-travelling idea. Aliens banishing their criminals to Earth is fine, but humans sending their criminals into their own unknown future where they somehow become immortal only makes sense if you're drunk.
To magic.
Magic works.
What was that, Sean?
To magic.
It's iced.
Beyond Christopher Lambert and Virginia Madsen as Michael Ironside as chief antagonist Katana, John C. McGinley as an oily executive, and of course Sean Connery, who delivers one of the dirtiest gags of his career when chatting up a fellow airplane passenger.
Something else for you, sir?
No, thank you. I never eat anything I cannot identify. That's not entirely true, of course.
In a world gone mad, there is only one law. His. Charles Bronson, Death Wish 3.
1974's Death Wish inspired a cycle of morally ambiguous revenge movies presenting urban America as a lawless hellscape, and it horrified critics up and down the country. It also inspired 4 sequels from, primarily, the ever-reliable Cannon Group, who acquired the rights from Dino De Laurentiis in 1980 and immediately set about eliminating the original's moral ambiguity by deifying rather than merely idolizing its murderous hero, Charles Bronson's vigilante architect Paul Kersey.
You believe in Jesus? Yes, I do. Well, you're going to meet him.
Kersey just loves killing people. The closest he comes to cracking a smile is when he stumbles on a new crime to avenge. And during dry spells, when he can't find any crimes, he proactively creates them, just to have someone to kill. Such is the fate of the Giggler, so named because he can run fast. A bag snatcher Kersey lures with a fake camera, then murders in the back, much to the amusement of the residents and the disgust of the other creeps.
They killed the Giggler, man. They killed the Giggler!
Yeah! Right on, man!
If it isn't already obvious, original Death Wish director and human-shaped bag of shit Michael Winner is once again behind the camera, and if you're wondering whether this morally questionable position on crime emanates from him or from Cannon, it was Winner who tried to convince producer Menachem Golan to coincide Part 3's release with the trial of real-life vigilante Bernard Goetz, whose 1984 shooting spree was allegedly inspired by the first 2 movies.
If Mr. Goetz is to be tried, I would be delighted if coincidence had this film opening the same week, because he would do us an awful lot of good at the box office.
Spoken like a true artist, Michael.
The plot's a little different, with Kersey kind of in league with a fire and brimstone police chief who's unable to bring law and order to a few square meters of rubble, and that's before the local gang calls in armed reinforcements from across the city. We seldom leave this area, which was actually a location in London's Lambeth district, so the film feels smaller and cheaper than its predecessors, as well as being dumber, and much more casual in its brutality. It really does seem strange for our hero's strategy to be a mix of spray and pray massacres and entrapment-based executions, but the latter does give us the movie's best moment.
What's that for? The new car?
That's bait.
When Kersey buys a car purely in the hope someone will try to steal it and give him an excuse to kill them.
What's the problem?
What?
With the car. What's the problem? We're stealing the f***ing car. What's it to you? It's my car.
What did you say this movie was about?
Oh, it's great. It's about this guy who dresses up like Santa Claus and kills people.
What?
Silent Night, Deadly Night upset just about everyone when it was released into 1984's holiday season. Its Killer Santa attracting the moral outrage of parents groups and critics alike, none of whom seem to have noticed the very similar Christmas Evil 4 years earlier.
You better believe in Santa, or he'll slay you.
Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 didn't incite quite the same level of ire, perhaps because everyone was used to Killer Santas by 1987, or perhaps because nobody saw it. Either way, it took an internet age meme for this one to garner much attention, though to be fair, it is a very good meme.
Garbage day! Huh? No!
It's ostensibly about the original killer's even crazier little brother, Ricky Chapman, who we meet all grown up in a psychiatric hospital where he's being interviewed about a killing spree we don't see until the end of the movie, which doesn't come until after we've watched half of the first movie again because it's edited into the sequel in the form of flashbacks, meaning there's less than 45 minutes of new footage. Though to be fair, it is very good new footage.
I hate you! Punish! Uh-oh!
There are some inventive kills, with death by umbrella perhaps the best, and nominal director Lee Harry brings a beautiful awkwardness to everything, but the highlight's undoubtedly the performance of lead actor Eric Freeman.
Really?
Part of me's reluctant to throw him under the bus because acting like this often comes down to unwise direction or bad writing.
No more bullets.
But either way, it's a treat every time he opens his mouth.
You are being very, very naughty! Naughty this!
It's lucky I'm not trying to spring a surprise here because I imagine you saw this coming.
2 decades after it was made, Troll 2 is finally finding an audience, and the fans are not necessarily all completely crazy.
It's the happiest night of my life. Troll 2 is the best movie in the world.
God, let's go backwards! I love Troll 2! Oh my God!
Troll is a 1986 fantasy horror film from Charles Band and deals with an attempt by the eponymous miniature malevolence to transform the tenants of an apartment building into a variety of mythical creatures, starting with new arrivals, the Potter family.
Harry Potter Jr. expected to have a little trouble getting adjusted in his new neighborhood, but he never expected anything like this. Troll.
Yep, if you didn't know already, the child thrust into a world of magic and wonder is called Harry Potter.
What?
Worldwide, the film made an estimated $10 million on a budget of less than $1, and then proved a big hit on home video. So a follow-up made sense, but it wasn't copyright owner Empire Pictures who produced it, because scut-mongering Italian flim-flam merchants Film Mirage got there first, with this unofficial, unrelated, unparalleled title hijack featuring a whole new set of characters.
I am Credence Leonor Gilgul of ancient Druid origins.
I should mention that unlike the first movie, Troll 2 isn't meant to be tongue-in-cheek or self-aware. This is a sincere performance given under the direction of a sincere filmmaker.
Am I mistaken, or is there something wrong with the two of you?
The thing is, that filmmaker was Claudio Fragasso, the lower-tier exploitationeer who'll probably continue providing fodder for borrowing Blockbuster's videos until one of us dies, and who also co-wrote this tale of a typical suburban family holidaying in the rural Utah town of Nilbog, which, unbeknown to them, is home to a community of vegetarian goblins who prey on humans that they somehow de-meat. And no, they're not trolls, they're very particularly goblins.
Goblins?
There are no trolls in this movie. Or actors, technically, with almost the entire cast, including amiable star George Hardy, selected from the handful of locals who turned up to open auditions. You'd never guess, though.
If my father discovers you here, he'd cut off your little nuts and eat them. He can't stand you.
The first movie was shot in Italy by a US crew, so it's kind of fitting that this one was shot in the US by an Italian crew. A crew who, with the exception of makeup artist and former actress Laura Gempsa, didn't speak English, which I guess is the why of dialogue like this.
You can't piss on hospitality. I won't allow it!
What are you going to do to me, Daddy?
Tighten my belt by one loop so I don't feel hunger pains. And your sister and mother will have to do likewise.
There's no consistency to the mythology, with some characters achieving victimhood when they're fed green sludge, some when they're turned into plants, some when they're melted into goo, and some when they're seduced with sweet corn. The town itself makes no sense, with questions like how and why is this happening, and how and why hasn't it been noticed, echoing through plot holes big enough to drive a popcorn-filled RV through. There's a cadre of idiots who inexplicably descend on this remote town in the hope of getting laid, a dead grandpa who speaks to the little boy from beyond the grave, and a witch who, I'll say this once more for emphasis, we're meant to take seriously.
Good morning. I am your neighbor. I am Credence Leonor Gilgold. I thought you might enjoy one of my ancient recipes.
Whether all this is Fragasso's fault because of his writing, Fragasso's fault because of his casting, or Fragasso's fault because of his directing, the one thing we can safely say about Troll 2 is that it was Fragasso's fault. So I'll let him have the last word in the marvellous documentary Best Worst Movie.
I did a very good movie. If the others say worst movie, them problem, not my problem. My problem is to shoot a lot of movie. I want to shoot a lot of movie. I can't stop.
What the f*** is a reboot?